Welcome to Commercial Real Estate Pro Network's CRE PN Radio. Thanks for joining us. My name is J. Darren Gross. This is the podcast focused on commercial real estate investment and risk management strategies. Weekly, we have conversations with commercial real estate investors and professionals who provide their experience and insight to help you grow your real estate portfolio. Today's interview is sponsored by Building Insurance and Risk. When you invest in real estate, it pays to work with a real estate investor protection specialist to protect yourself and your investment from catastrophic loss. The experts at Building Insurance and Risk focus on real estate investor protection. They provide you with multiple insurance coverage offers and a side-by-side coverage comparison. To learn more, go to buildinginsurancerisk.com. Today, my guest is Bruce Mack. Bruce is an in-demand national speaker, real estate investor involved with over $90 million in transactions. He's an author and the founder of Platinum Trust Group. As a licensed financial advisor at Trust Expert, Bruce empowers investors to achieve significant tax mitigation plus bulletproof asset protection through his proprietary IRS-compliant trusts. Over 80% of his clients are real estate investors, ranging from owning just a few doors to over 3,000. He educates on the ideal alternative solution to 1031s for capital gains treatment, as well as the best entity for holding assets that hands down are superior to LLCs or corporations. Bruce has an exceptional relevant training for newbie investors as well as seasoned pros with multi-million-dollar portfolios. And in just a minute, we're going to speak with Bruce about how a trust can protect you and your assets, provide tax mitigation, and help you transfer your wealth to the next generation. But first, a quick reminder, if you like our show, CRE PN Radio, there are a couple things you can do to help us out. You can like, share, and subscribe. And as always, we encourage you to leave a comment. We'd love to hear from our listeners. Also, if you want to see how handsome our guests are, be sure to check out our YouTube channel. You can find us on YouTube at Commercial Real Estate Pro Network. And while you're there, please subscribe. With that, I want to welcome my guest, Bruce Mack. Welcome back to CRE PN Radio.
Well, thanks so much, Darren. It's been a long time.
It has been. Last time I think we talked, you were either skiing or getting ready to go skiing, but you were having a lot of fun in the snow. And I'm assuming, based on that, this last season, you had a good one based on the record snowfall.
Record season, unbelievable year, great snow. It's the perfect place to be during the winter, Park City, and frankly, the summer too. It's great up here.
I love it. Hey, before we get started, Bruce, if you could just take a minute and share with the listeners a little bit about your background.
Oh my gosh. Well, I've been a very active real estate investor, and that's really what precipitated my getting involved doing in the trust business as the founder of Platinum Trust Group. I bought, rehabbed, and flipped 160 properties in a 3-year period of time. And as Darren said, I've been involved in over $90 million worth of transactions. And I will say that 99.9% of them went well, but there was that 100th one. There was a real bingo. And that bingo cost me about $175,000, which I can assure you, if I would have had a trust at the time that happened, then there would not have been that $175,000 loss. It could have been far worse. I could have been completely wiped out. But a trust, which you will find out during my presentation and discussions today, is a superior solution which can save your bacon. Absolutely has saved my bacon ever since I got my trust way back when. So that's really my background, is trial by fire, if you will, being a real estate investor like many of you are that are on the call today, and just enjoying life now that I have the assurance that I've got the asset protection that I need.
Awesome. Well, Bruce, if I understand right, you have a kind of a slideshow that might be a good way to talk a little bit more about your asset trust protection. Do you want to take over the controls here and kind of lead us through that? Does that work?
Let's try that. Okay, I'm going to try and get my screen up. And here we go. And can you see that okay, Darren?
Yep. No, I'm looking, got your Bruce Mack, trust advisor, licensed financial advisor. Got it.
Fantastic. So, folks, I'm going to go through my slides. You're going to learn today about trusts, a very specialized type of trust, not the type of trust and or trust that you've heard of before, which I will also explain the difference between. And at the end, I'm going to give you an opportunity to, if you see value in the presentation, that you'll want to set up a one-on-one with me, and it'll be a complimentary consultation for us to discuss how a trust might be a viable tool for you and your family. Platinum trusts are must for real estate investors for asset protection, tax mitigation, general wealth transference without a doubt, and complete privacy, something that we are all concerned with as real estate investors. So let's talk about the trust that you may currently have. A lot of people say when I first chat with them, well, I've already got a trust, so I'm covered. Well, you may have a trust, and it would likely be a living trust or a living will, which is created for your life for probate avoidance, naming beneficiaries, has very limited, if you will, usage. They were created because they do not offer asset protection and or tax mitigation, which our trusts do. Rather, they're a good tool for probate avoidance. They're also a good tool for naming who your beneficiaries are, but that's where those types of trusts end. Now, we constantly work with people who do have a living trust or living will, and we incorporate those components into our trust. So if you've got one, that's great. If you don't have one, we also will incorporate those components of probate avoidance and wealth transference. So in a nutshell, this is where we shine, and this is where the rubber hits the road. When we talk about the ability to eliminate capital gains, as we go from left to right, you'll see C's and S's, holding companies and or land trusts, which you may currently be holding some of your properties in, and or that traditional type of trust that many people have, a living trust. And you can see no, 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 and then yes with our trust. The ability to defer income tax on passive income in perpetuity. Absolutely, we do that. The other solutions do not. Avoidance of lawsuits, avoidance of judgments, liens, reaching your business and or you personally, probate upon death. There are some yeses there, as you see, gift tax, estate tax, beneficiaries, asset transfer, multi-generational wealth accumulation and transference, and the avoidance of annual fees. So these are what we're going to be focusing on. These are the advantages of what the Platinum Trust offers to our clients. Ironclad asset protection is the first section that we're going to talk about for your business and for you personally. Just when you think everything's going great, believe me, I've seen it time and time again over the years and over the decades, you can lose it all. We want to change that equation so that could never happen to you and yours. Statistically, property owners are liable for injuries incurred during hazards associated with their property, whether home or business. Slip and falls annually are the #1 most common personal injury lawsuit. And since 1980, they've increased by 30%. Right around 25,000 of these happen a day. And asbestos claims that you may be on the wrong side of when you're selling a property, if and or lead-based paint. Believe me, I've seen it all with real estate investors getting tagged for huge lawsuits because of these types of claims, as well as again, lead-based paint. Another huge one, which I'm sure you're aware of, is the dreaded mold that could be behind walls that you may not even be aware of, that could come back to haunt you later when you sell a property. Statistically, according to IFG services, as Joe Blow American, you stand a 1 in 3 shot of getting sued. If you are a surgeon, a 2 in 3 shot I know it's over 50-50 if you're a real estate investor, especially if you're been in the game for a long period of time. It's a numbers game. At some point in time, you will hit a bingo. It's just the way it is, unfortunately, because real estate investors are easy to find, easy to source their assets, and therefore are a big target. 109 lawsuits filed each and every day in the US. The average business lawsuit not only is time consuming, and there is no cost that you can put on that, but it's very dollar consuming too, with the average being $72,500. 91,000 PI lawyers out there, always looking and prospecting for new clients to be able to go after other people. Multi-million-dollar lawsuits, dog bites. Maybe you heard about the hot coffee spill with McDonald's, where the lady was awarded $3 million. But here's an interesting statistic. $2.7 million of that $3 million lawsuit settlement was in punitive damages. And punitive damages oftentimes far eclipse what the underlying award is, as was the case with the McDonald's lawsuit. Now, I'm sure Darren would bear me out that even with a personal umbrella, which I totally ascribe that you get a personal umbrella for underlying lawsuits that could happen to you. The fact is that no umbrellas cover for punitive damages, which unfortunately is the case. So yes, get the umbrella and then have the trust on top of that for the ultimate in-asset protection is what we ascribe to. Lawsuits can tap into business and or personal assets and pierce the corporate veil to get at lawsuits. And we're going to show you how that's not going to happen if and when you so choose to move forward with a trust. Closely held LLCs and corps do not protect you. The owners created what's called a facade for controlling the entity, and it's used in a lawsuit. They call it alter ego, and it's a very effective, very simple thing to prove, because if you have an LLC, it's either you personally or you and maybe your spouse. So it's an LLC partnership, or you may have a exterior partner, but it's usually a couple of people. And utilizing the alter ego is perfect for when you have a tightly held entity, as real estate investors chronically do. Corporate formalities is another way to invade and pierce the corporate veil. If your records are not up to perfect snuff, that's a way that you can pierce the corporate veil. Small business owners often also mistakenly write checks from company accounts for personal payments, and that is a major no-no and another way to pierce the corporate veil. Without an LLC, a C, or an S, which is what we're going to be talking about, you don't have to worry about corporate veils being pierced. And as you can see, utilizing alter ego, and the Wake Forest Law Review study shows that 46% of the time when litigated using that, utilizing that as the premise, they were able to pierce the corporate veil. That's like 1 in 2. Reverse veil piercing is even worse. And reverse veil piercing has become a very popular additional strategy that prosecutors use, because a lawsuit against you personally can allow the plaintiff to recover damages by reverse veil piercing the corporate veil. The thought that most of you have is that I've got an LLC, and if I use a single LLC for a single property, the maximum exposure that I have is I'm going to lose that one LLC and the contents in it. Well, reverse veil piercing, that is now very popular, wipes that out. Not only are they going to be able to get what's in that LLC, that where the problem was with that particular property, but when they introduce reverse veil piercing, they can go after all other LLCs that you may have to be able to get reciprocity to settle a claim for a lien levy or a judgment. This is huge. This brings a whole level of additional exposure that you've got. I say shield and protect your business, yourself, and your family against lawsuits, judgments, levies, liens, claims, and divorce. And this is what a trust does. And we're going to show you how it does it over the next couple of slides. Ironclad asset protection for you personally, as well as your assets. In this case, this was a guy who had an umbrella. And thank God he did, because it was $1 million plus umbrella. And they took it in an award in a bad car accident that he got into where he was found to be at fault. But they also wanted to make an example out of him, and he had to pay a $250,000 punitive damage award. This is what I'm talking about in real life. And in this particular case, this guy who's a Matt, his son, 17 years old, got into a very bad car wreck, and he was getting harassing phone calls from a potential prosecutor saying that I'm going to get you for over $1 million, so on and so forth, and blah, 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 blah. Well, Matt got sick and tired of it. He had one of our trusts, and Matt told him, look, my son is a minor. The automobile is in a trust and I have a trust. So you're not getting anything. And this is why he never heard from the attorney again. Properties and assets cannot be seized. Further, the trustee and the beneficiaries are never liable for debts of the trust if there are debts of the trust. Don't let this be you. As I said in the beginning, I lost $175,000 from a bad house deal. I wish I had known about the trust. If it happened to me, it could happen to you. With our trust, you are not subject to tax liens, levies, or issued against beneficiaries, trustees, divorce or alimony, child support, creditor, governmental agencies, or third-party claims, not subject to court's jurisdiction for turnover orders, except for fraudulent conveyance. So let's talk about that. Our trust is impenetrable. There is one exception. That exception is if you are found to have fraudulently conveyed your assets. I'll give you an example. You got a lawsuit, you got served, you knew about our trust, but you didn't have one. And then you want to get a trust, which we would not give you, but you wanted to get a trust at that particular point, and you conveyed your assets to a trust with willful knowledge that you were already in a lawsuit. That could be certainly alleged and proven that you fraudulently conveyed your assets. Therefore, they could set a motion to set aside the trust and likely be successful. Other than that, bulletproof asset protection. There has never been one of our type of trusts with the provisions that we put in it pierced or gotten into. It cannot happen. In all states, Cs, Ss, and LLCs are recognized as the equivalent of a person, and in the courts, they can be filed against people or the legal equivalent of a person, which is what they call it. Conversely, our trust is a contract and is not recognized as a person. Therefore, our specialized trust cannot be sued. It's as simple as that. Let's move on to tax mitigation, because this is another big consideration with our trust, that we can provide you excellent tax mitigation in various different streams of income that you have as a real estate investor. You're planning to sell your property or your properties, your business, you may have a side business, your home, or any other assets. With our proprietary trust, you have the ability to exclude 99, depending upon how we set it up, to 100% of the capital gains taxes. That's huge using our IRS compliant trusts. No need for 1031s. Matter of fact, we call ourselves the anti-1031 company, because you can exclude 99 to 100% of capital gains utilizing IRS compliant trusts. If you've done a 1031 exchange before, you know a 1031 is a tax deferral strategy, but I call it a tax bomb with a delayed fuse, because at some point in time, when you go to sell that next property, you're going to have the combined tax hit from the previous property that you deferred and the existing property that you rolled it into. So rather than having that hanging over your head, utilizing our trust strategy is a superior solution, because we're talking about excluding that tax liability. Legally reduced taxes using our one-of-a-kind registered a copyrighted trust, deferring taxes legally per IRS trust code, deferring the minimize income and estate taxes to the fullest extent IRS allows, in most cases between 70 and 100. Now, I did say 99 to 100 on capital gains, but you may have other types of income as well, including active business income. That's why we say 78 to 100. Likely it's much more than 78. And again, depending upon your situation and how we structure you, we will get a better result. But again, this is part of the reason we need to meet with you one-on-one. There's zero gray area, zero capital gains until distribution, and simplifies the accounting process. We have the ability for tax avoidance because it is legal and tax evasion is illegal. So when we talk about tax avoidance, that is absolutely in the black, not in the gray. And when we talk about tax evasion, of course, that's in the red. From the Department of the Treasury IRS Handbook for Special Agents 412, tax avoidance is not a criminal offense. Any attempt to reduce, minimize, or alleviate taxes by legitimate means is permissible. Matter of fact, here's a picture of the handbook, and any attempt to reduce and minimize taxes, as we said, is permissible. 60 of the largest companies, including Amazon, Netflix, and IBM, paid no taxes on pre-tax income of $79 billion. This is huge. I attribute this to the fact that they have fantastic wealth to be able to afford the brightest legal minds to be able to avoid taxes and therefore mitigating their tax liability. And this is really what our trust does. We've got enrolled agents with the IRS. We have tax attorneys. We have CPAs. Certainly, we have a large bevy of trust advisors. So with our full team, we can get a great result for you too. But let me show you some of the results that some of these major companies have. Before I do that, let me just show you again that in 2 cases, the courts ruled that persons may adopt any lawful means for the lessening in the burden of income taxes. That's in the Edison case, and in the Weeks case, the courts ruled that a spendthrift trust organization is not illegal, even if formed for the express purpose of reducing or deferring taxes. We believe in full transparency on whether it's your business income tax return, and yes, we do returns for you, and or we can work with your current CPA. Trust income tax returns, personal income tax returns, with all the tax professionals that we work with and we've worked with over the years with our trusts, having prepared countless thousands of returns. We've only had one client have an audit. It was roughly a year ago to the day. She has 70 properties, and she was audited for her 2017 return, which, by the way, was 2 years before she got her trust. That audit came back no change. The auditor asked to go through 2018. They did. That came back no change. The auditor then asked to let's take a look at 2019. That was the year. And at the beginning of the year is when she got her trust. So she had a full year of trust, if you will, utilization and trust usage. So with that in mind, that was a full year of audit on her trust, and that audit came back no change, which is, of course, the best that you could hope for. So we've had great results. This is how our trust works, and this is the result that we have seen over and over again, where we don't get audits, which is one thing, because our returns are very clean, and because the returns are going to the trust department, which has a much lower audit, if you will, by the numbers than going to the regular department. Again, we can discuss that more on a one-on-one call. But getting back to how the big boys play, Amazon paid zero on $11 billion in profits and actually got a refund for $160 million. Millionaires, I'm sure you've heard of, such as Joe Kennedy and Mitt Romney and Donald Trump, they all have trusts. And this is how these guys do the best job that they can with maximizing tax avoidance. Forbes did an article back in 2014, and this extrapolation, this is a quote from the article that talked about that said capital gains taxes could potentially be deferred for forever. So this is not a weird or obtuse, if you will, notion on tax deferral and tax advantages utilizing certain types of trusts. According to Forbes magazine, this is another article that they did. This was on Rockefeller. They maintain that the family still maintains a substantial fortune of $11 billion due to the fact that they have multiple trusts. Matter of fact, I happened to be doing some channel surfing and I saw this. Interesting, right? Camilla Harris keeps assets in a tax advantaged trust. So here's an opportunity for it to be for me, not just for thee, is what I always say. Now, let's talk about some expenses, giving you an idea how the trust is superior to a not having a trust solution, which is the one you've got today. As you can see in the first column, virtually everything is zero because you can't use those for deductions. And on the right column, everything is 100%. But I'd like to zone in on home expenses. Currently, you have one expense that you can deduct, which is the mortgage interest portion of the mortgage payment if you've got a mortgage. Well, I'm here to tell you that the entire mortgage payment is a trust expense. The entire property tax payment is a trust expense. The homeowner's insurance is a trust expense. All of your utilities, including your internet bill, is a trust expense. A domestic, if they come in, is a trust expense. Your pool cleaner, your gardener, all trust expenses. Repair and replacement of furnishings, renovations that you may do for potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars. These are all trust expensable, along with educational expenses, medical expenses, and many, many more. This is not a complete list by any means. This is a partial list just to start to give you an idea of how fantastic a trust is and how it works. Trust expenses versus taxable distributions. Let's talk about how you are not going to have your child get a K-1. Trusts can pay for your kid's education. You can do it two ways. You can either give them a check, which is in the second, if you will, taxable distribution column, where you write a check to your daughter or your son and tell them then they put it in their bank account to go down and pay their tuition. You'd need to give them a K-1. However, if you wrote the check directly from your new trust account to the college on their behalf as a beneficiary, you now have a trust expense, ergo no K-1 to your child. So this is a little bit of a adjustment, and we show you how to do this. So it makes it really simple to operate your trust and get the maximum amount of trust expenses rather than taxable events. How do I get money out of the trust? It's a question I get asked all the time. Very simple steps. You convey your assets to the trust. You use your trust to pay your business and personal expenses. You now enjoy access to trust assets such as cars, properties, yachts, and more. You can pay expenses for beneficiaries, like I just said, for education, medical maintenance, and support. And another great plus is the actual investment in the trust is a trust expense. So the present administration, here's some of the things that we've seen. I'm sure you're aware of them, but let me just bring them back to the front of your brain for discussion purposes. They have increased taxes. They have created inflation, which is a hidden tax on everything. In 3 years, you may not know this, but the estate tax cap is going to go from $12.9 million to $6 million. Now, for those of you who have a large amount of properties, there's no doubt that you will exceed that $6 million cap. And you certainly do not want to be setting up your heirs for a 45, 50, 55% loss right off the top from the estate taxes, should you not have the right type of trust like we have to protect you from this administration, you implementing the new cap, which is half of what the old cap was, or the current cap. Zero assets in a trust, or assets, I should say, in a trust, zero capital gains, whether it's stocks or bonds. Again, it's not just real estate, is really what this slide is all about. Currency trading, Bitcoin, crypto, selling assets to another trust, real estate acquisitions that you're involved with, buying or selling of businesses that you may be involved with, federal or state probate, no gift tax. Again, zero capital gains on the growth of trust-owned assets. The sale of assets to the trust are non-taxable events, so you don't have to worry about when we move assets over that you're going to be getting a big tax bill. Not going to happen. There is no cap on the amount of assets that you could move from you personally or your LLCs that you currently have, or Cs or S's, or however you're currently holding your properties, or even if they're in land trusts. They can all be moved over, and there is no cap on the amounts, and there is no tax on making that transition. Let's briefly talk about generational wealth transference, and then we'll wrap up. Our trusts have been an effective vehicle for passing on wealth to future generations. Our trusts minimize the state taxes due to the waterfall effect that is created as the trust passes from one generation to another. Our Platinum Dynasty multi-generational trusts are also useful in sheltering assets from divorce settlements and from other creditors, and can easily last for hundreds and hundreds of years. Now, there is other types of taxes that you currently are incurring, which is taxes on your rental income if you have a rental portfolio. Let's talk about that briefly. You currently have your properties on a 27.5-year depreciation table. And if you had them for over 27.5 years, the depreciation is all gone. Now, the opportunity to have a trust is superior to a 27.5-year depreciation table, because all passive income, whether it's your rental income or whether you're involved in, let's just say, an LP, a limited partnership, or you have notes that you're holding, or any other type of passive income that you're involved with, until the trust distributes, which I'll tell you about that in just a moment, the tax is not due. So when does the trust distribute? The trust distributes in accordance with the laws of perpetuity. And for our trust purposes, it says it distributes 21 years to the day after the death of the last sole surviving beneficiary to the last sole surviving heir. So this likely is going to be hundreds and hundreds of years from now, because you're going to be the trustee, kids going to be the beneficiaries, or whomever you want, or not. They're going to end up becoming the trustees after you pass, and they're going to keep downstreaming the trust multi-generationally until at some point in time in your legacy, folks stop having kids, in which case the last on the line grows old, they die. That starts the 21-year clock. And then after everybody's dead, 21 years has passed, the trust distributes. So any tax liability that there might have been that's accrued over the generations will be due and paid to the IRS from the estate. But the good news is it's not going to come out of anybody's pocket in your lineage. And this is what we ascribe to, because this is a superior solution. Maximum privacy. You're all concerned with privacy. This is a big, big issue. And we have the ability to structure it so that when a snooping eye or eyes want to find out how many assets you've got, when structured with our trusts, you have the ability to completely mitigate their ability to find out what your estate is worth. Not subject to public record, our trust prevents any information about your assets, liabilities, and heirs from becoming public, assuring the highest level of privacy. Our trust has the same constitutional rights as any individual: right to privacy, freedom from unwanted search and seizure, and all other rights. Again, this is a quick recap. Now you can see in a better light and understand how our trust is truly a superior solution to having a C an S, an LLC, a holding company, a land trust, and or a living will or a living trust. We have multiple strategies to get you set up properly. Personal and business trusts, which we discussed today. Private family foundations, which is a whole other discussion, which we may want to bring into the mix or not. Possibly private holding trusts. Again, not one size fits all is our strategy. And we need to meet with you one-on-one to see what's the best strategy from where you are and what's important to you and how we want to proceed. With our vast experience and expertise, we can design the right strategy for you. And we're offering you to get a complimentary consultation at zero charge. So I always like to ask, what would your future look like if you were able to control what you earned? I think you already are getting a great insight into what that's all about. And here's how you can get in touch with us. You might want to take your phone and take a picture of this so that you can jump on my private calendar. The one-on-one will be with me should you decide to do that. And I'd love to chat with you. Also, having been a seasoned real estate investor for many decades, I have something else for you as a real estate investor, and that's an opportunity if you're wanting to grow your portfolio. I have the best strategy for having massive inbound leads for you right into you directly, and you can sit there and literally pick and choose the leads that you want to follow up on to acquire and increase your portfolio and therefore your wealth. So please feel free. Let's jump on a call. Let's talk about it and let's see what's the best strategy for you and if it makes sense for you at all moving forward with the trust. So let me turn this back over to you. I think we're right back. How's that?
No, you did it. You managed to shift gears. That was pretty good. That's a lot of information, but very informative, and I'm sure the listeners will appreciate all of that. One of the challenges we face as you try and grow your wealth is how to keep it from whether it be taxes, lawsuits, and or to transfer to the next generation. And a lot of good information there. Hey, Bruce, if we could, I'd like to shift gears here for a second.
Sure, of course.
By day, I'm an insurance broker, and I work with my clients to assess risk and determine what to do with the risk. And there's three strategies we typically consider. We first look to see if there's a way we can avoid the risk. When that's not an option, we look to see if there's a way we can minimize the risk. And if we cannot avoid nor minimize the risk, we look to transfer the risk. And that's what an insurance policy is, a risk transfer vehicle. And as such, I like to ask my guests if they can look at their own situation. It could be your clients, investors, tenants, the market, public policy, Federal Reserve, whatever it is that you believe to be the biggest risk. And I'd like to see if you can identify what you consider to be the biggest risk. Again, for clarification, while I'm an insurance broker, I'm not necessarily looking for an insurance related answer. And so if you're willing, I'd like to ask you, Bruce Mack, what is the biggest risk?
I think for me and for my clients, undoubtedly the biggest risk is to not have a trust, because the exposures that are out there in today's litigious environment are so massive that you, unfortunately, if you don't have one, you could be wiped out. And therefore, without a doubt, that would be my direct answer.
Got it. Makes sense. Bruce, where can listeners go if they'd like to learn more or connect with you?
If they want to know more and they didn't, I'm not going to go back to that slide, or actually, let me quickly go back to that slide. And if you didn't take a picture, please do take a picture of this slide. Let me just blow this back up. You can go to bruce.platinumtrustgroup.com. That's bruce.platinumtrustgroup.com, which brings you into my interactive calendar that's on my desktop. and therefore you'll be able to pick a time slot. I will call you at the appropriate time that you choose that works best for you. And or if you're having problems getting on the calendar, what have you, I did provide my direct line, and that is 702 area code 371-2345. Again, that's 702-371-2345.
Got it. Well, Bruce, I can't say thanks enough for taking the time to talk today. I've enjoyed it, learned a lot, and look forward to doing it again soon.
Thank you so much for the opportunity, Darren. It's been a pleasure, and it's been way too long. It's been a couple of years, like you said, and it's great to have that opportunity again to work with you and your fine folks.
Yeah, awesome. I appreciate that. For our listeners, if you like this episode, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Remember, the more you know, the more you grow. That's all we've got this week. Until next time, thanks for listening to Commercial Real Estate Pro Network's CRE PN Radio.